Independence strategy advisor Sean Hagedorn says the core problem with South Africa is that the country lacks a workable growth model. He says the country's public policies are routinely anti-business, anti-competitive and anti-Western. I spoke to him to explore ways to redesign South Africa's political economy after the local government elections.
What has the municipal elections in South Africa revealed so far?
Well, I think we know now a lot more about the tensions among a lot of fundamental factions, and there are a lot of factions at work. And we now know a lot more, particularly about the urban-rural factions, and I think we're learning a lot more about the young-old factions.
Now, what do you really make of what's happening now? Do you think the increase in political competition, as most people try to describe it, judging by the results, will help to boost the momentum for reforms in the country going forward?
Right, absolutely. That's the key question. And I mean, a lot hinges on what happens really just in the next few days, what happens in terms of coalitions. And certainly a lot of analysts, and I would include myself among them, believe that if the DA and the EFF can strike a working modus operandi, so to speak, that then there'll be a lot more pressure for reforms. I don't think that's obvious, but that will create a lot of effective momentum for reforms, but it certainly increases the probability of that happening.
But then there are also those who fear that it might also lead to an increase in populist reforms by the ruling party. Do you also foresee that?
There's been speculation within the capital markets and various opinions among the credit agencies in that regard. And what I've been saying on this show and elsewhere really for more than just a few months is that the numbers just don't work. And so what we're going to see is a lot more scrutiny now, probably of what happens regarding fiscal expenditures and sort of clever tricks to work around the fact that there's just a lot less money to spread around.
But then you see, there are also those who, of course, we have seen mixed reactions from ratings agencies following that election. While there's still fears of a non-investment grade being given to South Africa by the end of the year, we also saw that the rand started to trend upwards shortly after the elections. What does that say to you? Should we be hoping for the best?
So I have pretty strong opinions about that. I think focusing on the exchange rate and the reaction of the credit agencies and also whether South Africa is going into recession, I think it all misses the point that the credit agencies have spotted ahead of a lot of commentators and observers that the real problem is that South Africa doesn't have a workable growth model. And really in the recent election results haven't really shown any light on how any sort of coalition at any level is going to develop a workable growth model. That's still the huge unknown.
Now, Sean, what workable growth model would you prefer?
Right, I mean, and so that's a really big question, and I do have a lot to say about it. First off, the dialogue has to move in that direction. There's a number of steps. A lot of the choke points are political. Just to list a few things that have to happen, there needs to be an understanding that there's no workable growth model because South Africa doesn't have an economy so much as it has a political economy, and that a lot of the politics are in the way. But then once you get on the other side of the politics, even if there sort of is a working coalition, so to speak, to tackle the problem, there really aren't any viable plans on the table.